This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we're going to start with a prayer here. And again, since you're muted, just follow along silently with me, if you would, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit, enlighten us about how to help our clubs effectively create a culture of vocations. Grant us wisdom to know what we should do, and through the grace of the Father, energize and inspire us to do this important work for the future of our church. We ask this through Jesus Christ. Amen. And then we'll pray directly to the Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, kindle in them the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit that they may be created and that you may renew the face of the earth. Well, good. Thank you. Let me get my screen clear here. And again, I want to ask everybody if you'd mute yourself so that we don't get any unwanted background noise there. Okay. This is the first of 3 sessions. I want to thank you for coming on district governor training. Tonight, we're going to talk about the district governor position and the mechanics of club officer training. That's an important function that the district governors have in each of their for each of their districts. And then Thursday, we're going to have one on club officer training content. We'll talk about an overview of Serra and also how clubs operate. And the final session will be a second part of that content, talking about vocations, programs, membership, and communications. I want to start with a little bit of a philosophical perspective on the district governor's job. I want to start off by telling all of you that I'm really envious of each of you. The district governor job was my favorite job that I've ever had in Serra. I have to tell you that. And I don't think I ever have felt more of God's joy than doing that job. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But the job is, I think, it may be the most important job in all of Serra, because the district governor serves as the liaison between individual clubs on the one hand and the U.S. Council and Serra International on the other. And it's really primarily and only through the district governor that clubs come to understand and realize that they're part of something much larger than just their own club. And that's critical to us accomplishing the Serra mission. I want to tell you a little bit about my story so you know my background. I was a district governor for 5 years, and my district was it was District 9E, that is basically the state of Iowa, and it included 6 clubs and 4 dioceses and 315 members between all the 6 clubs. And I have to tell you that my first 2 years as a district governor, I would rate myself as almost totally ineffective. I had an absolute lack of self-confidence. I had a mistaken belief that I had nothing to add to the clubs that would be beneficial to them. And really, those first 2 years, I found I just didn't get, I just could not get traction in terms of what I was doing there. And then year 3, I did start to get some traction. And we started with conference calls with the presidents on a quarterly basis. And we just asked presidents to share best practices, one best practice with the other clubs in the area. And the presidents really were excited about that, much more than I thought. And then we did a club planning calendar each May to help all the clubs plan the coming year. I offered to be a program speaker, and I actually went and talked to a number of the clubs. And we're going to talk about some of the programs that are some of the speeches and programs that I use there. And then we started club officer training through webinars. And in the meantime, I learned more and more about the Serra ministry. So but by year 3, I really felt like things had turned around and I was making a real difference with the clubs, and I really knew God's joy. Now, I don't tell you this to brag or to give you this as a model. I tell it to you so that you can improve on my story. Hopefully, we don't lose those first 2 years for those of you that are out there that are new. I hope you learn from, sort of my mistakes. I think that being a district governor is difficult because you're asked to sort of introduce yourself to a whole new set of people that you don't know. And I think a lot of people are kind of shy in doing that, and I know I was. But what I found was that those people were just as great at Catholics as the people in my own club. And I just wish that I would have started sooner and not been so reluctant to get involved with the clubs. And the clubs have been so warm in terms of their support for me, and it's just been a wonderful experience there. But I just want you to realize if you have some of these feelings when you're starting off, you're not alone, but don't let them consume you. Try to get all those out of the way in the first 6 months if you can. Don't take as long as I did to do it. But once you get going, I'll tell you, it's a wonderful job to have. And like I said, I don't think there's anything better in Serra. Okay, the key, I think, to being a great district governor comes down to how you view this leadership role that we're in. And I kind of view it as a difference between trying to direct clubs, tell them what to do, and give them advice on what they can do. So, and I think the concept was captured in a talk that was given at one of the Serra rallies down in Phoenix by Tom Thibodeau, but he talked about servant leadership, and he kind of distinguished that between servant leadership and self-serving leadership. He said, I go to serve, I'm committed to developing the other human being, versus self-serving leadership, which is that I'm interested only in privilege, power, and prestige, which unfortunately you find too much in in our government and in a lot of businesses here. So just realize that that's the key to being a good district governor, is to look at it as a serving role, as something to help other clubs, upper people be successful in what they do. Whoops. And then I put together a sort of a checklist for myself at one point of what I thought the perfect Serra club looked like. And this isn't a bad checklist, I think, when you go, if you go to visit a club. We haven't been able to do that very often, but hopefully that'll start up here pretty soon. And these were the things that I kind of used to look for in a club. But first, that it's prayer-based and not just a social club. We do have some Serra clubs that lean towards that social club, and it needs to be much more than that. Prayer is really the foundation of everything that we do. And then there are clubs that have action that follows the prayer. It isn't just prayer, but a lot of prayer calls us to do something, and that's especially true of vocations prayers. So there's active vocations work going on in the clubs, and also those clubs are starting to engage people that aren't in Serra and may never be in Serra to join in prayers for vocations on a parish level. The officers in a perfect Serra club act as a team and not solo players to try and accomplish our mission. And I got to tell you, that's, I think, one of the most important things in a Serra club officer group is to be a team. There are too many times when I think we just view each one as a solo player. We think, well, membership, that's the vice president of membership's problem. And communications, that's the communications vice president's problem. And programs, that's the programs vice president's problem. And that's not true. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but actually each of those positions is dependent on others to be successful in what they do. So the key is to act as a team, and I think that's one of the primary responsibilities of the president of the club, is to make sure that officers are acting as a team and not solo players. They also have programs that inform and inspire members that are tied to our vocations mission. And I'm really big on this. I know that we sometimes are so hungry to find a program speaker that we kind of veer off course, I think, sometimes. I once had a club who got into a sort of a big internal dispute because they wanted to have somebody from the pro-life movement come and talk at one of their monthly programs. And they called me about it. A group thought, well, that's not really our mission. Another group said, well, it's a critical part of the Catholic Church. And what I told them in the end, I said, well, I think it should be tied to our mission statement. And if the speaker can find a way to tie the pro-life issue to vocations, then I think it's great. But otherwise, I think there are other groups that can do a better job probably of informing Catholics on those things. Another thing about the Perfect Serra Club is that it knows and it reports to the bishop and the vocations director. They're really our bosses here. Now we're going to talk some about that. And one of the ways they do that is by trying to engage the bishop in a more active role in the program, looking at the master program for the year and what's going on, and seeking the bishop's input on things he thinks we should be doing and things maybe he thinks there are things that we're doing that aren't as important. So to get that feedback is really important. A really good Serra Club knows that it's part of something bigger than just itself. And usually that means that they participate in things like regional conventions and U.S. Council meetings like the Rally, or even the Serra International Convention, or on some of the online activities that we have, like the communications and the vocations and the programs and the membership bi-monthly conference calls that take place. And then the thing that you can really tell about a perfect Serra Club is it's joy-filled, it's energetic, and it's actually very proud to be a Serra Club. I think that that's probably in the end the badge that says it best as to whether or not the club's right on track there. So I think that's a good checklist for you to use. If I go to the next slide here, it's just kind of a pause. I just gave you some of my philosophy about the job. That we're going to get into some nitty-gritty details, but anybody have any questions or comments on what I've said there? Remember, you have to unmute yourself if you want to say anything. Okay, why don't we go on then? We'll get into the nitty-gritty here, the district governor job responsibilities. In the materials that I provided here, I hope you got a chance to print those out in advance. I'm up to slide 8, which is on page 4. And just in terms of talking about the job description, there's actually been a fair effort put into trying to come up with some simple one-page job descriptions for the district governor. And you have 2 there that you can look at. They're both very similar, but one is a district governor position description that was put together by Richard Arians for the North Central Council. And you can take a look at that. And then another one is one that I put together back in 2020 when I was the region director for the Central Region district governors. So you can take a look at that. There's a lot of detail there. We're going to cover some of the key things there, but I wanted you to have those as sort of a reference in terms of what you do there. Then we're going to talk about the 4 essential functions of the district governor. We're going to talk about 6 essential actions and some other important responsibilities. We're going to talk about the toolkit for district governors, and then we're going to talk about region fees a little bit. So let's go first to the 4 essential functions. The most important thing for that district governor is to be the face of Serra, and they do that through a personal presence, the information and the service you provide to clubs, and always letting those clubs know they belong to something bigger than just their club. And sometimes that can be a conference call where you do a best practice sharing between clubs. Sometimes that can be a report that somebody comes back from one of the conferences with, the district governor talking about something that they saw that they thought would be of interest to their clubs. But being the face of Serra is really critical. And like I said, if the district governor doesn't interact pretty extensively with their clubs, those clubs don't know that they're part of something bigger than just their club. The word that I like to use for the district governor more than any other is a cheerleader, to help the clubs you serve, to inspire them. And I think it's important to advise, don't direct. Our job is not to tell clubs how to do things as much as it is to point out what they're doing that's really well. And if you see something they're not doing well, a lot of times what I like to do is emphasize another club that's doing something particularly well, and hopefully people will learn from that. So focus on good things they do and praise them for it. A lot of praise goes a long ways here. You need to know the clubs you serve and your bishops. Knowing the clubs takes time because you're only going to interact with them on probably a few months at a time, maybe through conference calls, maybe one visit a year. But it's really important to get to know them, and it does take time. And you also need to get to know your bishops. And I think there's some ways that we're coming up with to do that. But a lot of district governors help organize an annual bishops meeting to tell the bishop what the clubs are doing in their diocese and ask the bishop's input on what the clubs can do that they're not doing. And then a 4th essential fundamental function is to identify and develop your replacement. So, I think once you get past that period of indecision, which hopefully lasts you less than 6 months, not 2 years, then I think it's important to start looking for a district governor-elect. And one of the great advantages of having district governor-elects is that when you leave, it isn't like somebody starting again completely anew in a learning curve. They've had a chance to kind of see what you do and how you do it, as well as help you, I think, in some of those functions. But you want to identify that person long before the time that you're planning to leave the district governor job. So those are the 4 essential functions. Be the face of Serra, be a cheerleader, know your clubs and your bishops, and identify and develop your replacement. We talked about the importance of knowing your bishop. And again, this is something that I'm proposing. It's actually some ideas that I picked up from some of the clubs in the central region that are really doing this on an active basis. We have 3 clubs in particular down in the Kansas City, Kansas side. They're all in one diocese, and they have an annual bishops meeting that's actually a mass with a lunch afterwards. But there's a half an hour that's spent before the lunch where the presidents of the clubs give a brief report on what they've done, what they plan to do, and then they ask the bishop for input on anything they'd like them to do or anything that they think they're doing that doesn't need to be done. So that's the basic concept of it. And the goal here is to do it in a way that's not burdensome on the bishops, because bishops are busy people. It's hard to get their time as it is. And so the strategy that I'm recommending at this point is that clubs, if a district is all one diocese, this is pretty easy. It needs to be done on a diocese by diocese basis because you have different bishops. But the idea would be for the clubs to do a short sort of executive summary for the bishop of what the club did last year and the plans for the coming year, maybe a copy of the proposed master program for the year. But you want to be sure to include your prayer activities. I think bishops are well aware of the things we do, like hosting seminarians and priests and sisters and even the bishops at appreciation events. I'm not sure they know all the prayer activities that are going on in the background there, and I think that's important to let them know. And the district governor may want to provide some information about what the U.S. Council's doing too on that. But the basic idea here is to let the bishop know what the clubs are doing, and the idea would be to mail this 1 or 2 or 3 page executive summary to the bishop in advance of a meeting. And then to ask for 20 minutes to a half an hour for a face-to-face meeting with the bishop. And don't spend the time reading the executive summary because the bishop will have already read it. What you really want to just go do and say, what do you think about what we've done? What do you think about what we're planning to do? Is there any other way we can really help with the vocations effort in the diocese? So I think that bishop's meeting is really important. Okay, let's go to 6 essential actions for the district governor. One of the most important is to visit clubs personally. That hasn't really been possible here. We have clubs that have not been meeting in person with COVID, but I think we're coming out of that. I hope we're coming out of that. And I think it'll be important again for district governors to get out there and personally go to club meetings. Now, some people like to go to board meetings, and sometimes that's the only thing you can get to, but I really recommend that you go to a full club meeting because I think that's where you get a better pulse of how a club's doing. Another thing that every district governor should absolutely do is conduct regular conference calls for all the club presidents. And I did this 3 times a year when I was a district governor. This is sort of another form of the district council formation and use. But it's this idea of bringing the presidents of the clubs together on a regular basis to share ideas and to share information and to inform them of what's going on up at the higher levels of Serra. One of your jobs is to assure that the officers are trained. Historically, it was the district governor who was responsible for doing the training of all the club officers in their districts. And that was usually done by in-person meetings. But the challenges were starting to pop up on that even before COVID hit, and then COVID just kind of slammed all those ideas. So we have transferred a lot of the club officer training to webinars, and actually we're doing a national webinar for all club officers in the United States. But when that's all done, that's sort of a one-way transfer of information to the club officers. There really isn't a chance to interact, and I think when that is completed, there's still a place to hold either a conference call or a Zoom meeting, or ideally even an in-person meeting like on a Saturday morning with club officers from all your clubs to go over questions they may have, things they didn't understand, or to do some training on best practices there. But it's a great way for the officers to be trained and also to get to know officers in other clubs. It's great to see those friendships form so that somebody who's a vocations vice president in one club might call another club's vocations vice president and say, have you guys ever tried doing this? Because somebody suggested we try it. And to get feedback like that is just invaluable. A fourth essential action is to participate in the region director conference calls. I think that most of the region directors also have 2 or 3 times a year a conference call with the district governors. Again, it's an opportunity to share best practices and to find out, what's going on out there. So, but it's important to participate in those. And then this is one, it seems so mundane, but it's so critical at this point. The club officer lists. We need accurate, complete, and timely lists. The district governor needs that. We need it to invite people to training that's going on all through the year. And we need it to communicate with people. So in a lot of ways, we're going to lean on the district governors to help us make sure that we have accurate and timely and complete club officer lists so that we can communicate through the whole council. And finally, this is just, it's not a big deal. It may sound technical. It's not. We want to check annually and make sure that clubs are complying with IRS by filing their 990Ns within 4 months of their fiscal year end. And it's just a matter of checking on that, and you can even ask for a copy or something. But I think a lot of you know that we recently had a big issue with a number of clubs that lost nonprofit status. At one time, it was over 85 clubs in the United States for failure to file these 990Ns or the correct 990N. And Bob Campney and a team of actually club treasurers went to work on that over the past 2 years. And we have gotten all of those clubs reinstated as nonprofits, with the exception, I think, of 12 at this point. So they've made tremendous progress there. But we don't want to lose. We don't want to lose the ground we gained. We don't want to let that happen again. So we just want to check annually and make sure that the 990N has been filed. So those are the 6 essential actions of the district governor. Okay, now let's talk about a district governor's toolkit. These are things that I think could really help you be effective as a district governor. Did I skip one here? I think I did. Yeah, here's some other important action items. Attend the Serra rallies to keep yourself trained and informed and inspired. That's really important. And I think you all know we have a rally coming up here next week. Starts on Thursday through Sunday down in Dallas, Texas. But those will really fire you up, and you need to get fired up if you want to go fire up your clubs. Attend the leadership webinars. We usually have those 3 times a year. You'll get an invitation to those, and oftentimes we try to offer them at different times to accommodate people's schedules. But they also are a good way to be informed and also to carry information back to the clubs to help them be successful. You're occasionally going to be asked to prompt clubs to pay their dues when necessary. Some clubs are kind of slow paying dues, but we're watching that very carefully, particularly in the U.S. Council at this particular point. And actually, I think at this point, it's rare that a district governor actually gets involved in that. I think that the Chicago office and the treasurer actually get involved in that, but you may still be called upon to do that at some point. You want to be sure to prompt your clubs to have representation at the Serra International conventions, either in person or by proxy. If somebody from the club is going, they can have the authority to vote on behalf of the club. If nobody from the club is going, you can designate a proxy, somebody you know from another club or one of the officers that you trust to vote for your club. But it really is important to participate in the voting that takes place. A lot of times it's pretty non-controversial, but sometimes there are some important issues, and it's important that all clubs have a say in what's going on if we're going to ask them to abide by whatever the decision is. Encourage clubs and individuals to contribute to the Serra Foundation. That's becoming a more important task, I think. We'll talk some about the Serra Foundation next week and all the good work it does, but we want to have the district governors pushing, if we can, both clubs and individuals to contribute some amount, no matter how much, to the Serra Foundation. It's a great way to satisfy our mission to the worldwide Catholic Church to help grow vocations. And finally, you may be called upon to lead or assist in a new club formation. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. That is kind of a special challenge in itself, but we'll get to that in a second. We'll talk a little bit more. Okay, the district governor's toolkit. These are things that you can use, I think, and that you should put together to make yourself more successful. The very first thing is to get yourself a freeconferencecall.com or a Google Meets account for conference calls. That freeconferencecall.com, I've used that when I was there, and it is truly free. I've never paid a cent. What you get is a telephone number, and once you've got the telephone number, you never have to interact with them again. You just let people know we're going to have a conference call at such and such a day at such and such a time, and it's a great way to communicate with your presidents of your clubs in particular. Now, free conference call, I've noticed, has been begging a little bit more for donations to help their costs. So I don't know if it will stay free forever. But if it does not, Google Meets is an account that you can do the same thing. Just get a conference call number. And to get that, if you're interested, contact John Liston in the Chicago office. He's the executive director. But he can line you up with a Google Meets account. Again, it's free. We have a special deal with Google because we're a nonprofit there. But having that phone number, out there so that you can reach people and organize meetings pretty quick is really important. And again, I think what's nice about both of these is once you got the phone number, you never have to interact with free conference call again. You just have to tell people we're going to have a conference call at 7 o'clock on Tuesday evening. Here's the phone number to call. Everybody dials in, and you can even get a recording, I think, if you want. Okay, second thing is you need to put together some group email lists because you're going to be communicating regularly with a bunch of groups here. The first is all the presidents of the clubs in your district. So you want to have one email group that has District 6 club presidents. And it may have, if you got 4 clubs, you're going to have 4 presidents. I would include president-elects on that too to keep them in the loop. There are times when you're going to want to communicate with just the club treasurers. And so you're going to have a separate email list of the treasurers of all the clubs. And then a third one is for each club, I would have an email list that includes all the officers in that club. So if you want to communicate with a specific club about a specific issue, and it's important enough that it's not just the president, you want to talk to all the officers, you have a way to do that efficiently. But doing that once at the beginning of the year is a great way to make sure that you're efficient the rest of the year. You don't spend all your time trying to find people's emails and put together lists as you go through the year. And then, a lot of times, one of the things that I had difficulty going to clubs was I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do when I got there other than just sit in the back and listen. And that seemed like kind of a waste. So I started to put together some presentations for clubs. And I have these in either PowerPoint or Word versions on the leadership resource page, or what was formerly the district governor resource page on serraus.org. But let me just, these are all listed in some of the documents you got. I actually printed them out here just so you could see what they're like. But the first one is, it's membership. It's more than just asking. And then 10 keys to a successful club. Those 2 presentations I put together, they're sort of a quick, somewhat superficial training course for the officers in the clubs. But the nice thing about them is you're not just training the officers. If you make a presentation at a club program, you're training all the members. So you can take a look at those. And again, these are things I put together. They're PowerPoints, and the actual PowerPoints version of it is, again, on the leadership resource page. You can just pull those down and feel free to make any changes you want. And then there's a talk I've given called Who Really Was St. Junipero Serra? And that's just, it's a Word document that is a speech I give. There's one that is Why is a Serra Club Special? And I think that's a very important one these days. And there's also, if you want to do it with PowerPoints, there's a set of PowerPoints that you could use as well. So, but again, you should have actual copies of these and the materials you printed off for tonight's meeting. There's a U.S. Vocations Update, which is a PowerPoint presentation. I want to mention that there is a new member orientation, which is video. It's on the Serra YouTube channel, and it's 36 minutes long. It was really intended for people who are relatively new to Serra to tell them what Serra is all about and how it works. But a lot of clubs have been using this as a club program. And it's been surprising that a lot of Serrans who have even been in Serra for a number of years find it pretty informative of things that they didn't really know about. So, and then a final one here is district updates. And there's and these are not on the 7 group. This is on the bottom of page 7 is the first one here, but these are some templates that I put together. And I found incredible interest among Serrans in clubs about these things. So let's talk about each one of these. The first one is, the first one I did was just to kind of teach clubs how other clubs are doing, and particularly at membership. Everybody's always interested, you know, they have their own challenges, but they like to kind of see where they stack up and things. So on the bottom of page 7 there, which is slide 14, jump to that here. This is something that I did for the Iowa district. There again, I told you there were 6 different Serra clubs in the Iowa district. And what I did is I began tracking, actually I started this in 2015, but I took November 2011 as kind of a benchmark. I found what I thought was some pretty good data from back then to see how we were doing overall. And I have just every year updated this to show what's been happening to membership amongst all the clubs. And again, there's been a lot of interest in that. A second one is this template. And again, I'm just using Iowa, the Iowa district as an example here, that you could do this for your own districts, but I mentioned that there were 4 dioceses in total in the Iowa district: Davenport, Dubuque, Des Moines, and Sioux City. And I did the same thing, and I started tracking the number of seminarians. And I found that you can find this information a lot of times on the diocesan website. And if you can't get it there, you just call the diocesan vocations office and tell them you're with Serra. They're pretty free about what their numbers are there. But you get a chance to see how your diocese is doing versus other dioceses. And, you know, I want to point something out on this one. You can see here that Dubuque in January 2020 looked like it was, and it's traditionally been the strongest of the group, had 25 seminarians, where everybody else had, Davenport had 9, Des Moines had 16, and Sioux City had 7. But a vocations director, an old friend of mine, told me that that's not a very good way to look at things. You need to find out how many Catholics are in those dioceses. And so what I did is I created another chart here, and I found out, I calculated the number of seminarians per 100,000 Catholics in the diocese. And again, the number of Catholics there is listed in the second column to the left. And I get those numbers either from the diocesan websites, and if I get desperate, I can go to Wiki site, and just put in the diocese, and they'll give you some fundamental information about it. The numbers don't change too much, but one of the interesting things is, if you remember, Dubuque looked like it was really doing exceptionally well in terms of the number of seminarians, but it turns out there's twice as many Catholics in the Dubuque diocese. So that when you compare there, you can see that Dubuque was actually sort of in the norm of, for example, what Des Moines was doing. Sioux City was low, and Davenport was a little low there too. But again, these 3 charts are something that I found that the clubs had an intense interest in, and I used these for some of the presentations I made when I did club visits. And it's something that I might recommend that you consider yourself too. Before we jump back, get here to the district governor toolkit. There's one I want to add here that I'd like, it's not on here, but I'd like you to pencil in it if you would. In the most recent Serra magazine, there are actually 2, but the one that came out that has the big crucifix on the front, there on the last 2 pages, there's an article called "What Do I Get for My Dues?" And it's attempt to answer the question that you're going to get sooner or later at some club meeting is, you know, these dues we pay, what do we get for them? You know, they seem awful high. And that article is really designed to answer that question. And I would recommend that you pay good attention to that article and even cut it out and carry it with you on different occasions. But be prepared to answer that question in a real convincing manner when somebody asks you that. So add that to that list. Then you should always remember the district governor resource page, which is now, I think, being called the leadership resource page. It's on serraus.org, and there's the direct site to it. But if you go on to that, you'll find frequently asked for forms and documents. All the training materials that are listed above are there in the original formats like PowerPoint and Word, so and Excel if it happens to be that case. But it's a great place to go look, and a lot of these training sessions will be posted there too. Although more and more we're shifting the training over to the Serra YouTube channel. Anything we record, that seems to be a little bit more reliable in terms of people being able to access it. And I should mention too that anything on the Serra YouTube channel can be downloaded to your computer so that you don't have to have a Wi-Fi connection at a club meeting. You just have to have a computer and maybe a projector and a screen so that people can look at some of those things. But there are some great presentations there. And again, I think if you're looking for it, it's Serra International YouTube. If you plug that in, you'll get a whole bunch of things and you can see what's going on there and what's available. Okay, the District Governor's Manual. This is a fairly voluminous document, and it was written in 2014, but it's still a pretty good repository of information, not just about what the district governor does, but all about Serra. But it's thick and it's printed on both sides. It's almost single space the whole way through. But Richard Arians, who's on the call tonight, in his past role as leadership chair, went through this thing and highlighted the key parts for district governors to be aware of. And I know that you can sit down and in under an hour go through this if you just focus on the highlighting and get the essence of this manual. But I think everybody ought to have a copy of the District Governor Manual. And if you don't have one, email me with your mailing address, and I'll have the Chicago office send you one with the highlighted version there. Another important thing to have is this book, To Save 1,000 Souls, by Father Brett Brannon. I use the first chapter of the book. There are little vignettes in there, and I read those sometimes at the beginning and end of training sessions as a way to inspire people, and I think a lot of people really like it. In fact, one time I was up giving a spring leadership planning conference up in Carroll, Iowa, and we had a pretty good group of people, and I was reading these all through. I think I had 9 designated to read before and after different sections, and a lady came up to me at lunch and she said, "I was planning to leave at lunch today." She said, "No offense," she says, "but I'm going to stay to hear more of those readings, not your training." So sometimes you just got to grin and bear it, but whatever works. And the rest of it is a good read too if you don't know anything about the vocations, particularly priesthood and the holy orders and ordered priests. The differences there. It really goes into a lot of good detail on that. So I would get yourself one of those books. So I think that, and one other, there's a new club quick start manual. It's 9 pages long, and it's on the again, it's on the district governor resource page. You can find it there if you want to download it and print it off. That would be something that I think you'd want to not do unless you've got a club that you're actively thinking about starting a formation of, because it'll probably change over time. And I think let's talk a little bit about new club startups here. They're a fairly unusual thing for district governors to deal with, but for that reason, the training on it hasn't been that great. But I'll just tell you some lessons that I think have been learned on new club startups. Probably the key thing is that you got to have strong bishop support for these things to take off. The major problem we have is that there's not a great awareness in these places we're trying to start clubs that Serra even exists, much less what it does. So there's an education element there, and then you're asking people to join that effort with very little knowledge. Bishops know what's going on, and a lot of bishops who have transferred around have been in dioceses that have Serra clubs, and they get to a diocese that doesn't, and they want somebody to start one there. So, but if you've got a bishop support, you're about 50% of the way there. If you don't, you're really slugging an uphill battle. So pick and choose your spots wisely there. And then that speech that I mentioned in the toolkit, why a Serra club is special, that's a really important talk to give somewhere early in the formation process, because it talks about what Serra does that vocations clubs and parish vocations committees can't do. It's a great answer to a lot of the questions of why Serra clubs are special. And it's actually very inspirational. It ends with an excerpt from Pope Francis's talk to Serrans in 2017. And one of the other problems I've seen is that a lot of clubs start up in these formation meetings, and they spend all their time trying to figure out, well, how do we please Serra? How do we get Serra to approve us? And I just told them, just forget about all that. I said, what you need to do is just start acting like a Serra club immediately. So within your formation group, try to get a rosary going on every person's with every person that's on the formation team once a week or maybe once a month. Within the formation group, do a spiritually adopt a seminarian program. And outside the formation group, get parishes active in 31 club rosaries for vocations. I think that's a really valuable way to get going, and the prayers seem to be the fuel that makes it happen. I'll give you an example here of one club, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, started up about 4 years ago. And on the day they chartered, which was, they'd been in formation for just about a year, on the day they chartered, they had 30 members, but they had also had 300 families signed up in 3 parishes to pray a monthly rosary for vocations. The next year, 1 year from their charter date, they had 40 members in the club, but by that time they had 500 Catholic families praying a monthly rosary for vocations. And that's the kind of stuff that I think really makes the new clubs go, where they really engage both within and outside the club in vocations efforts. So those are just some thoughts on lessons learned there. I'm going to finish this section here and talk about region fees. I just want to mention these because they're becoming more and more of an issue. Over time, for some reason, some of the regions have dropped assessing a region fee. This is different than the SI and the US Council dues. And I put some examples in here, but a lot of clubs will charge a fee for district governors to use, a fee for regional directors to use, a fee to support regional conventions. And one of the regions here, North Central, particularly in the Twin Cities area, actually assesses clubs $10 per Serran for vocations work. And I think some of that goes to support expenses of the vocations office and some of their projects there. But you can see that, and what these funds are for is to help pay for some of the out-of-pocket expenses that district governors and region directors have, and also to feed funds for regional conventions, because you need some seed money to make those things happen. So in the central region, which I'm most familiar with, every year we charge $3 per Serran for the district governor fee, $2 per Serran for the region director fee, and $4 per Serran for the region convention. So that's a total of $9 per Serran. We send an invoice to each club, usually in July or August, and ask the club to pay that. And we just let them fill in what the membership is so that they calculate how much it is and send a check. And North Central, relatively similar, but they do a great job of funding their district governors who have a lot of expenses. They charge $7 per Serran, for the region director $2 per Serran, and they don't have anything for a region convention fee. And like I said, they're fairly unusual in the Twin Cities area for their vocations work assessment of $10 per Serran. So they charge $19 per Serran. And then the Mountain District, Rocky Mountains area, they charge $3 to support district governors and $2 for region director. And again, these fees they're really critical if you want to get people to step up into these leadership positions like district governor and region director. There are out-of-pocket expenses. I mean, you have mileage. Sometimes you'll have an airplane flight to a rally. Sometimes you'll have training materials or fees associated with starting up a new club. And this gives those people some funds to work with. It never is enough to cover the real out-of-pocket expenses, but it's something. And there are a fair number of people that when we ask them to step up, they'll mention that the financial issues are a barrier to them. Some people, it's not an issue. In some of the areas, like in the Central, I know some of the district governors have never taken anything out of their funds. They just let it build up for some district governor that comes along who actually needs that money to step up into the role. So it's something that we need to talk about in Serra more. We don't have these in any of the other regions, as far as I know, on an organized basis, but it's an important thing to make sure that we have strong leadership and strong regions in Serra. Okay, I think that's pretty much it for the job description. We're going to jump into mechanics of club officer training, but there must be some questions out there at this point, so let's take a break and unmute ourselves and ask any questions or make any comments.
Hey,
Mike, this is
Maury.
Maury, go
My
ahead.
question is the available presentation for club programs. Are those available at USAC website?
Yes, at serraus.org. And then click on the leadership tab, Maury, and go down to club-officers-district-governors. And that page has, it's laid out pretty nicely. You could find almost everything on that page.
Okay.
And it's in the original format, like the PowerPoint format. So if you want to take it and modify the PowerPoints, you can do that.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep. Somebody else had a question, I know.
Mike, this is John Caton in Kansas City, Kansas. Tell me again, because I came on just a little late, where am I going to go to see this again, this whole presentation again? Where's it being recorded at?
What will happen, John, is when I finish the recording here, I usually listen to it to make sure it came out okay. And then I'll post it, and I'll send you an email. I'll send everybody who was invited to this an email, and it'll have the link to that. But it'll probably be either on the district governor page, or you'll be able to look it up on YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I thought there might be more comments, at least, about the region fees. I know that's a tough question, but I do know that the regions where we don't have the fees, it's sometimes difficult to get people to take the district governor position or the regional director position. But I think it's really important to do that. It's a hard time to, people look at it as an increase in dues, but it's not. It's something that was done a long time ago, and it should never have been dropped, but it has been. But where it's being done, it's really being used effectively to get good people and good leaders. Okay, any other questions or comments? Let's plow ahead then. We're going to shift here. We're going to talk about club officer training. And I think I've already mentioned that this historically was one of the
You're offline, Mike.
Mike, I can't hear you.
Mike,
Mike, you somehow muted yourself.
You're muted, Michael.
Mike, we lost your connection. I'll call him. Hello, Mike, we can't hear you.
Doesn't bother Mike. He just keeps talking.
Yeah. Wonder if he's enjoying his presentation.
That message.
Yeah, we can't, no one can hear you right now. Right. We can see the slides, but cannot hear you. We don't know. Are you on mute, or we just lost your audio? Maybe you should, of course, if you go off, everybody goes off, I suppose, right? Okay, I'm gonna hang up now, but just so you know. Okay, yeah. Well, he did answer my call.
All right, good. Thank you.
I thought I was the only one that lost.
Did you hear us, Mike?
No, he's showing that he is X'd out.
I think he's working on it, trying to figure out what went wrong.
I tell you, isn't this technology wonderful?
Serra, can you guys hear me again?
Yes, we
Now-
can. Good.
All right. Thank you, guys.
You're on.
I could have talked the whole night there. Okay, let me get the screen
Mike, we
sharing back.
were wondering if you were enjoying your presentation.
If I was what? Yeah, I love to listen to myself talk, Richard. Okay, where did I lose you guys? At the back here at club officer training, the start?
Yeah, that's correct, Mike.
Okay,
Just finished
we'll
with
try to go through.
questions.
Yep, okay. Well, I talked about the purpose being not just to give information, but to inspire club officers and for leadership development. And the inspiration sources people have used have been to sometimes do these meetings with an opening mass with the Bishop or Vocations Director. That's a really effective way. To have maybe in the middle of the presentation at the lunch, have a speaker like a priest come in and talk about vocations and about the special role that Serra plays there. I also use those readings from the front of To Save 1,000 Souls. They're about 2 to 3 minutes in length, but they're pretty inspirational. And I think that people really enjoy those as sort of a break from all the information that gets passed along. Pope Francis's message is important and very inspirational. And that's actually copied in here, I think, a little bit later. And talking about St. Junipero Serra's life and example is another great way to inspire. And there is a presentation that Maury Ratuisti did for the Pacific Northwest region that's also on the District Governor Leadership resource page that you can see there that, and you could use if you want to. It's very well done. So those are how you build inspiration into your training. Then we'll talk about the question of timing. I don't think I need to spend a lot of time on this, but the issue with the timing of the training is that clubs are taking too long to identify new officers for the coming year. And that means that if you do your training too early, you're going to miss the new officers. You're going to be training the old ones. And if you do it too late, you're going to not have those people fully empowered to go ahead and take their positions when they step into it. So, you know, basically, we're recommending that the best time to train is April or early May, and utilize the national webinars to do it, and to follow it with a district meeting. Either it's in person, that would be ideal, like a Saturday morning, or to have a Zoom meeting with the club officers, just your clubs, to discuss what they learned in the national webinar training for the club officers and to answer any questions there. Okay. There are a lot of issues with to deal with in terms of training, either in person or by webinar. You know, the in person is the traditional way it's been done. The advantages are you get a lot of high human interaction. People get a chance to meet officers from different clubs in the district, and there's a lot of sharing that takes place both formally and informally. The disadvantages are low attendance. And that's because unless you're in one of the few districts where the clubs are close together, and there are some of those where this is not an issue, but in a lot of them, to find a central location and a date and a place where you can get everybody to commit to come is difficult. So in a lot of cases, sometimes the drive time exceeds the time that's actually spent in training. So it discourages people from coming. But the nice thing about it is if you do that, you're not reliant on technology, and you can do hard copy training materials that can be re-prepared at the very last minute for giving out. The issues with webinar-based training is that I think you get greater attendance, because for one thing, you can offer different times for the same session, and people can attend from home, so there's no travel time or distance that has to be taken into account. You could break the training up like we're doing here. You can use breakout rooms, which I have not used yet effectively. And some clubs, to kind of be a compromise here, some of the clubs that have done the club officer training have actually all gotten together at the president's house at the time of the training, and they listen to it together on a TV. And then at the end of that, after the training's over, they have a discussion. But I think that's been a good way for some clubs to bring their officers together as a team. The disadvantages are pretty obvious. There's less human interaction. You don't really get too much opportunity to meet officers from other clubs. You have people that feel technically challenged to connect. And some people will only use a conference call, not a computer. That's pretty limited interaction. And one of the requirements is you've got to be technically savvy to use the webinar tools. And also the materials have to be prepared pretty far in advance and emailed out so that they're available when the session starts. And then finally, you're going to run into some clubs that just don't send officers to training. They don't listen to the webinar. And the question is, what do you do? And as a last resort, I think I mentioned this, I go and try to ask to be a presenter at one of their monthly programs. And I use one of these two programs that I've already talked about. Membership, it's more than just asking, or the top 10 keys to a successful club. And both of those are an attempt in an indirect way, to train the absolute base training that's required for the club officers. And ideally, most of the other club members get to hear it too. But it does only skim the surface, but it is better than nothing. I want to talk briefly about treasurer training. The treasurer's job is a little more technical. It's a different challenge for us than the other club officers, because oftentimes it involves accounting skills and tax skills and knowing how to work the Serra web portal. And the problem is that most district governors have not held the treasurer job and therefore aren't competent to train for it. So we've decided we're going to do that by a national webinar, and we actually did our first one last year, I think in July or August, and it went pretty well. Bob Campney put the program together with the help of some kind of a team of treasurers from large and small clubs, and I think it was well received. And I think we're going to do that again this year, but I think that's something that we'll handle separately from the other club officer training. But there is one important thing that you need to know to pass along to your presidents in particular. Serra likes to be financially accountable, and we want to make sure that the clubs are accountable too on how they're spending their funds. So one of the things, the Serra recommends that you have an audit done by the officers every year. Well, very few volunteers want to spend their time sitting around Saturday morning going through checkbook registers and checking things out there. And so as a practical matter, it just doesn't happen. And what I recommend is kind of an in-between step, is that at each of the board meetings, the treasurer should provide an exact copy of the checking account statement. Not just a report on how much is in there, but an exact copy that shows, if he says there's $10,000 in the club account, to have a bank statement, the most recent bank statement, that if it should show somewhere between 9 and 11,000, it's not going to be exact because the timing's off. But if it says 500, it's time to ask some questions there. So it's very important for us to train the presidents to ask for this from the treasurers. There are also some sample agendas and evaluation forms. If you go to the district governor and leadership resource page, if you want to look at how some people have set up their trainings. And this would be particularly valuable too if you look at doing a little session at the end of the national webinars where you bring all your club officers together, either on Zoom or in person, what people have done there to do that, and a sample evaluation form as well. So that's kind of the mechanics of club officer training. And from here on, we're going to go into next week, the actual content. And you might wonder, well, why do you have to listen to this if you're not going to do the training? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is you sort of need to be trained on what club officers are supposed to be doing if you want to be a good district governor, because they're going to ask you questions about that. So it's important for you to understand this. And the other thing is that I just think if you're going to do that follow-up session, familiarity with what these people are sitting through and watching is very important. So we're going to breeze through that in the next session here. So with that, we're at 8:33. Let me ask if there's any questions or comments about this at this point. And I apologize for that time we lost to the audio. I don't know what happened. Anybody out there want to make a comment or have any question?
I have a comment.
Yep. Who is it?
Are there going to be supporting documents for the club officer training content?
Yes. It's extensive.
Okay.
Yeah, I have every slide that I use is represented in what you're going to get. You're going to start getting them tomorrow for this session 2, and then you'll get it over the weekend for session 3. And those actual PowerPoints are also posted on that leadership resource page on serraus.org.
Okay.
Great. Anybody else?
Mike, Jim Burns in Kansas City. Awesome job, sir. Thank you very much. Great job.
Yeah. Anybody else?
7:30 Thursday, correct?
7:30 Thursday. It's 7:30 on Thursday, and then 7:30 the following Tuesday, Central Time.
Got it.
Okay.
Hey, Mike,
Yes. Will?
will all these club officers be involved in this training? Will they get copied on all this?
They will get invited, Bill. But this all comes down to, you know what, I think what we're starting to discover in Serra is if we have an Achilles heel, it's the incomplete or inaccurate information that's in the portal. You know, in a lot of cases, clubs have not listed who their officers are. And if that's the case, they're not getting any of, you know, we have some things that go out to just vocations vice presidents and some to communications vice presidents. The club officer training will go out to all club officers, but only if they're listed as an officer in the club portal. So, you know, I think it would be important for you to visit with clubs and make sure that they are up to date there. And I know one of the defects right now is that the district governors cannot get access to some of the club portal information for other clubs. Although I think you have some ability to look through for officers. You just can't make changes there. But I think it's really, that's the important thing. If we have that, they'll get an invitation. Otherwise, it'll come down to you guys passing along information, kind of duplicating what we're doing, but saying, do you guys know about this? It'll probably happen in April after Easter. That's when we'll start it. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm trying to do right now is get into the portal and check all my clubs and make sure all the information there is accurate so we can be a little more efficient.
Yep, not a little more efficient. If it's not accurate, we're dead because we really rely on those emails to communicate.
So we're saying
Okay,
now
anybody else?
we're saying now
Ralph?
that the district governors can get into the portal and look at
You know, Ralph, I'm not sure about that. I think you can, but I tell you, if you can't, call me because I can and I can check for you, and I'd be glad to do that.
Okay.
But I think there's now a way that you can access, you can look at a club's roster, or at least its officer list, even if you're not in the club. That's what I was told. I'll have to try that myself and find out. I'll try to give a report on that Thursday.
Yeah, if we can do that, that would be good. That would
I know.
be good.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else?
Thanks.
Okay, let's, why don't we wrap it up here with a prayer, and then I'll let you guys go. I really appreciate your sitting through this, and apologize for that technical glitch right in the middle there. I'm just glad somebody called me, or I would have finished and thought there was no interest in the program at all. Okay, follow along silently with me in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is the prayer for perseverance or vocations. O God, you have constituted your only begotten Son, supreme and eternal priest, for the glory of your majesty and the salvation of mankind. Grant that those whom he has chosen ministers and dispensers of his mysteries may be found faithful in fulfilling the ministry they have received. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Thanks again, everybody, and I hope you can join us for these next two. A lot of information packed in there, and I guarantee you'll learn something new about Serra you didn't know before. So,
Thanks,
God
Mike.
bless.
Great work, Mike.
Thanks.